Begin by faith to obediently do what you did when you were first saved that you're not doing anymore.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series Escape the Coming Night, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome to this brand new edition of Focal Point on the American Family Radio. Sorry about that little bit of a delay. I forgot to put my headset on until the intro music started playing, and then I got the cord all tangled up and wrapped up. Yeah. It's all messed up. So anyway, that was the reason for the delay. Anyway, glad to have you on board. Glad we got that all straightened out. You're listening to Focal Point on American Family Radio, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio, and we are very happy that you are on board with us here at the USS Focal Point. A lot we are going to get to today. Kind of amazing. I had the opportunity to watch a good part of the service for Billy Graham this morning. Only the fourth civilian to be honored by the United States government by lying in state in the U.S. Capitol, and the first religious leader that has ever received this honor. That's a sign of the universal respect and admiration that people all over the world had for him. And I read this week also, every state gets 2 statues in the United States Capitol, in the statuary. There's 108 statues in there. Every state gets 2 and only 2. Now, North Carolina has 2 in there, but they are going to replace one of those with a statue of Billy Graham. So for time to come, Billy Graham statue will be in the statuary hall in the U.S. Capitol, along with all of the great leaders in American history. And again, we talked about this earlier. The Bible in the New Testament is constantly telling us that Christ is seated at the right hand of the Majesty on high. And if you read through the New Testament, you will only find one place where Jesus Christ stood, where he's pictured as standing in the unseen world in the heavenlies, and that was to greet Stephen after he was martyred and entered into the eternal kingdom. And my guess is that Jesus Christ himself, he might have done it for other people. I could see him doing it for Paul. I could see him doing it for Peter. I could see him doing it for St. Augustine. I could see him doing it for St. Athanasius. I could see him doing it for Martin Luther. And I'm willing to bet he did it for Billy Graham. I remember one of the vivid scenes. I was a big San Francisco Giants fan since I was about 13. And I remember when Willie Mays hit his 600th home run, only the second player to do that. And what was really striking to me is that the home plate umpire, which this is something they never do, he came out from behind home plate and stood in the third baseline to shake Willie Mays' hand as he came around the base toward home plate to honor him for his accomplishment. And I'm guessing there were some other luminaries there to greet Billy Graham with their hands extended, probably hugs, claps on the back, some high fives, fist bumps. Martin Luther and John Wesley, John Calvin. I bet they exchanged some fist bumps along with Athanasius and Paul and Peter and all the apostles and St. Augustine. Anyway, great homecoming for Billy Graham, and a great honor for him to be feted in the U.S. State Capitol. Well, let's turn our attention to the Word of God. We're in Psalm 46 through 48. The reading schedule you can find at pray.afa.net. And I want to do something a little bit different. I want you to be prepared to just take a moment to be very quiet before God, and wherever you are. Now, if you're driving, don't blank out. Don't close your eyes and drive by intuition. So I'm not talking about that. But even if you're in your car driving, when we get to this point, I want you to just prepare to just silence yourself, just quiet yourself, and just listen quietly as I read the scriptures. Now, what I want to talk about here, or read to you, is from Psalm 46 through 48. Here's what David says in Psalm 46:1. This is very familiar stuff to us, of course. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, because God is our refuge and strength. Now, what I want you to observe is he doesn't say that God is a help in a time of trouble. Doesn't even say that he is a present help in a time of trouble. He says he is a very present help in a time of trouble. That means he is as present and as real as it's possible to get. He is present. You may not be able to see him, but he is present right at your side in a time of trouble. You know, Governor Bryant, at the governor's convocation a couple of days ago in the White House, he told a story about what happened at a high school district here in Mississippi at Pearl High School, where there was a shooter came on campus. There was a teacher who had a concealed carry permit, but Mississippi law doesn't allow him to carry it on campus. So he went out to his car, unlocked his car, got in his glove box, and brought the gun back into the school, and he neutralized the threat. You know, and Governor Bryant's his analysis is how much better would it have been if he'd had a concealed carry permit and was able to have it with him. What would that gun have been for him if he'd been able to carry it at his side in contact with his very person? Now, the gun out in the glove box, that was a help in a time of trouble. But until he got it and put it on his side, it was not a present help, and it certainly wasn't a very present help. But when he got that weapon of self-defense, that weapon of power and strength, and it was attached to him, it was in his hands, in his grip, then it was a very, very present help in time of trouble. Now, we're told in verse 10 of chapter 46, this is another familiar verse, that we are to be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. You know, he says, be still. You know, when we're agitated, when we're troubled, when we're stirred up in our minds, stirred up in our hearts, stirred up in our emotions, our stomach is all a twirl, he says, take a moment to just chill. Be still, sit quietly in the presence of God, and allow his presence and his promise to reassure you. You know, and you notice the resolve in this. I mean, it's a firm, clear, unambiguous statement on God's part of resolve and intent. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth, and I will be a very present help in a time of trouble. Now, I'd like you to be still just for a moment. I'm just going to read some of these verses of assurance in Psalm 46 through 48. So wherever you are, just take a moment to be calm, settle your mind, settle your heart. You may want to close your eyes wherever you are, but whatever it is, take a moment to just settle yourself before God, and let me read these words of reassurance. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in a time of trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam. God is in the midst of the city. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Clap your hands, all you peoples. Shout to God with loud songs of joy, for the Lord, the Most High, is to be feared. He is a great king over all the earth. He subdued peoples under us and nations under our feet. He chose our heritage for us, the pride of Jacob, whom he loves. For God is the King of all the earth. He reigns over the nations. He sits on his holy throne. The princes of the people gather as the people of the God of Abraham, for the shields of the earth belong to God. He is highly exalted. Amen.
You shall not murder. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. This is the 6th commandment of the 10 commandments. You shall not murder. We are asking schools all over America to put this on their marquees, put this on their signs out in front of their school for 1 week to remind America's students that innocent life is precious. Help us spread the word about this campaign to your friends and family. Please go to our website, afa.net, and sign our open letter to America's schools. We need to proclaim this message, you shall not murder, across the land. Why? Because gun control alone will not solve matters of the heart. We need our young people to understand that murder is a violation of God's law, and also it's a violation of the laws all across this land. So help us. Go to afa.net and spread the word.
Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Corner. During an MSNBC interview concerning the Florida school shooting, Senator Kamala Harris, a presidential hopeful, made an amazingly ironic statement. She said, "We cannot tolerate a society and live in a country with any level of pride when our babies are being slaughtered." Does she realize the words that came out of her mouth? I'm pretty sure she didn't. If she did, she wouldn't be such a regressive proponent of in utero baby murder. In reality, she only objects to baby slaughter if it aids a governmental gun grab.
Listen to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Central on AFR. For more from Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in our conversation. Part of the program today. Got a lot of content we are going to get to. Let's jump right into it. By the way, well, I'm going to save that till a little bit later. We'll get to our Islamic stack here in just a minute. Let's go ahead and start working through the stack on the Florida shooting. That continues. I'm getting a little bit tired of that whole story, but it continues to be the focus of so much attention, so much media coverage that we need to kind of stay current with that issue. You know, we saw yesterday that in Florida there were numerous laws that allowed for the arrest of somebody who made threats against a specific individual. And remember, Nicholas Cruz did that on at least 2 occasions where he issued threats against the boyfriends of his ex-girlfriends, threats that were directed to a person. And again, there were many opportunities that authorities had to intervene in this situation. According to the Blaze story from this morning, a neighbor said she gave police myriad examples of Cruz's concerning behavior. According to Joel Guarino, law enforcement said they could do nothing at the time because Cruz wasn't an immediate threat. She called the cops after her son showed her Cruz's Instagram posts, which reportedly featured weapons and indicated that he had an interest in carrying out a school shooting. And don't forget, it's against Florida law to display guns on social media. You can't do that if you do it in a way that could be perceived as threatening. So he easily could have been arrested for that, and the cops knew all about it. And Guarino said, look, I begged the officer. He told me he's not an immediate threat, nothing we can do. And her response was, you know, he is going to kill somebody, and there's nothing that I can do about it. And when she heard about the shooting, she and her husband, their first thought, this was Nicholas Cruz. She said, I had no doubt he was going to do this. My husband and I both knew that we would eventually see him one day on the news wearing an orange jumpsuit being charged with murder. They knew it was Cruz immediately when the news reported it. She remembers a time when Cruz was standing over her dog as the dog was foaming and convulsive, and he had this wild, eerie look about him, not a look of concern, but sort of a look of strange, odd, bizarre pleasure. And it exhibited that kind of concerning behavior since he was a baby. She'd seen Cruz killing small animals such as toads. And I want to tell you, if you find somebody who can be cruel to animals when they're young, you got to watch out for that person. Somebody who could take pleasure out of torturing animals has got something messed up inside their heart and inside their minds. That is somebody to watch out for, because there are specific bans in the Bible on cruelty to animals. So when we kill animals for consumption, which is perfectly fine, it's morally permissible to do, we do it in the most humane and painless way we possibly can. And yet Cruz killed small animals like toads and then would cut them open. And she said his face was excited when it was happening. He had this wild satisfaction look. And as soon as he saw me, she says, his demeanor changed. He knew what he was doing was inappropriate. And here's an example from Maine. Police have arrested a Maine woman who posted a video of herself target shooting while listing city officials by name and describing them as my target. She was arrested February 23 on charges of terrorizing with a dangerous weapon. So what does this prove? It proves that it can be done, and there was ample reason to do the same with Nicholas Cruz. Now, here's another school district in Kentucky that has just voted to let their teachers carry concealed guns. This is in Polk County. They are going to work with Polk County Sheriff's Office to get training for those teachers that volunteer. They're not going to force anybody to do this. This is a unanimous decision by the school board after a town hall meeting at the Pike County Central High School. This is Pike County. And the Pikes County Sheriff's Office is going to oversee the program and finalize a formal policy for the school board to consider. They hope to have armed staff in schools by fall, if not sooner. That'll be the first Kentucky school to have armed staff, school staff, on site. So each volunteer is going to be subject to a background test, a drug test, a mental evaluation, a qualification course, including firearms training by the Sheriff's Office. They're going to provide the training for free. Those that are carrying on campus would have to re-qualify multiple times a year. The Sheriff's Office will also perform unannounced inspections to make sure that everybody is behaving themselves. And I don't know what to make of this. It's a story from Northeastern University study claiming that schools are safer than they were in the 1990s and that school shootings are extremely rare events. Now, remember, this is a liberal organization, and the liberal media can have two objectives, two aims in reporting on school shootings. They have two contradictory objectives. On the one hand, and we saw this right after the shooting, remember it came out right away in the media that this was the 18th school shooting this year. Total poppycock, total bilge. Nothing about it was true. But why did the media breathlessly repeat that false stat, that fake news? Well, the Counterfeit News Network led with that. Why did they do it? Because if you can convince people that mass school shootings are completely out of control, what can you use that for? You can use that in your objective, your mission to ban guns. School shootings are out of control. People are using guns to commit these mass shootings. We got to get guns out of the hands of everybody. So it becomes part of their agenda, becomes a tool they can use, propaganda tool, to disarm the American people. Now, why would this liberal organization come out with a report that school shootings is not an epidemic? Nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. Schools are safer than they were in the 90s. Why would they be doing this? Because they want to create, they see the move towards schools arming themselves with personnel. Texas has got 100 school districts where you have school personnel that have armed themselves. We now have another school district in Kentucky doing the same thing. Colorado, other states in the Midwest, they've got entire programs that they offer to schools to train people to carry guns, carry concealed on campus for the purpose of security. So they want to try to stop that trend. They realize, look, they're bucking against the tide here. So they want to make the case that school shootings are there, just never happen. No need to worry. Don't get all worked up over this. Don't start arming your teachers because there's no big deal. Schools are safer than they were in 1990. Now, one of the things that makes me suspect about this study, it comes from Northeastern University, which is a bastion of liberalism, as they virtually all are, but also the conclusions use data from Mother Jones and Every Town for Gun Safety in their research. It was this Every Town for Gun Safety. They're the ones that came up with this statistic that this was the 18th school shooting of the year. So carry that with a big dose of skepticism and realize that the media or the left, they've always got some kind of hidden agenda in the way they choose the news, in the way they present it, in the way they distort it. I've got a column here about asking the question, why does the left oppose arming teachers? And the guy that wrote this column went around asking people on the left, why do you oppose giving guns to teachers? And their response is consistent. He says, it's a crazy idea and we need fewer guns, not more guns. That's their kind of rote response. And they'll say, hey, New York officers only hit their targets 1/3 of the time in time of stress, and a gunfight or whatever, that can drop as low as 13%. And he says, well, if that's an argument against arming teachers, why isn't that an argument against arming police? If police are that incompetent, why even give them a gun to begin with? But they almost never explain why allowing some teachers and other adults to be armed is, in fact, a crazy idea. And he goes on to suggest this theory, and I want to present it to you for your thinking. I think he's on to something here. I'm just thinking about it for the first time because I just read this an hour or so ago. But he says, he makes this observation that the left, listen to this, the left almost always opposes fighting evil, and they almost always work to disarm the good who do want to fight. So the left opposes fighting evil. They don't want people out there fighting evil. You know, and remember what the Bible says, resist evil and do good. I mean, there's a command in the Bible to resist evil and to resist the devil. The left, they don't want to have anything to do with the standards of God, these moral directions of God. So they want to fight evil. They want to fight those who are resisting evil. They don't want to resist evil. They want to allow evil to progress. They want to disarm the people that would like to fight evil. So that's kind of a general thesis I want you to stick in the back of your mind because there may be something to it. You know, and he gives some examples on other levels, like the Cold War. The left was always calling for what? A nuclear freeze, a unilateral disarmament on the part of the Western powers. You know, when the United States wanted to bring Pershing II missiles into Europe, the European left mounted huge demonstrations. It was for their protection. But they wanted to fight those that were willing to fight evil, the menace coming from the Soviet Union. They mocked Ronald Reagan when he called for anti-ballistic missile defense system. They laughed at him. They ridiculed him. You come to communism in the 20th century, fighting the radical Islamic terror, Islamist treatment of women, fighting North Korea, a Holocaust-denying theocracy of Iran, the Syrian mass murderers, violent crime in America. The left is either silent or they are appeasing. And, of course, they're working constantly to weaken the American military. And so their fight against these, even these manufactured evils, these minimal or non-existent evils, they're just ferocious. And this is his concluding paragraph. That is why the left opposes enabling some teachers and other adults in schools to carry arms in order to possibly stop a mass murderer. Listen to this. The left doesn't fight evil. It fights those who do. Just as the left hated anti-communists, hates opponents of Islamism, that's why they hate us, they mock us, they ridicule us, they accuse us of being Islamophobes and haters, and they hate Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu more than they hate the Iranian Ayatollahs. It hates those who wish to see teachers and others voluntarily armed to take down the murderers of our children. I think it's a profound observation. You know, it's something you don't even think would be possible. But there's something so perverse and twisted about people on the left, morally twisted. Their minds are twisted. They're not thinking straight. And again, that's the takeaway line from this column. The left doesn't fight evil. It fights those who do. We'll be right back with more content. Stay with us. Focal Point on American Family Radio. Be right back.
This is Dr. Richard Lamb, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Yesterday, I shared with you the fact that even the New York Times is now greatly concerned about the spread of pornography in our culture and the sex miseducation it is giving our young people, especially our young men, and how it is damaging their ability to be the husbands and fathers and productive citizens that God intends for them to be. As I shared with you last Friday, most American boys around the age of 13 get their first exposure to hardcore pornography on their smartphones, and for most girls, the age is 14. And while surveys tell us that Americans still consider pornography to be morally wrong, the number that say that it is morally wrong has gone down. The Gallup poll tells us in 2017 that 36% of Americans say that pornography is morally acceptable, a third of the nation, but it's up 6 points from just 6 years earlier. Given the tremendous growth of the pornography industry with the rise of the internet and its negative impact on our mainstream entertainment, the relatively low numbers on approval of pornography are, for now at least, somewhat encouraging. As destructive as pornography is to individuals and to relationships, it is comforting to hear that only 36% of Americans find viewing pornography morally acceptable. I would include myself among those who would say that it is a sign of moral decline itself that people view and only 36% finding pornography morally acceptable as a good sign. The rampant presence of ever more explicit pornography has severely impacted the nation's morals and led to an ever greater acceptance of ever more deviant material. But at least acceptance of pornography, 36%, lags behind unmarried sex, 69% find that morally acceptable, and gay-lesbian relations, 63%, find that morally acceptable on the nation's demagnetized moral compass. More about this tomorrow. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
Hi, welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Glad to have you in the conversation. You know, and again, I think this is a profound observation. I want you to learn it and live it and love it. The left does not fight evil. It only fights those who do, and it disarms them. I mean, there is something so twisted and so perverse about that. I mean, that's what made me hesitant to sort of embrace that idea, because it sounded so far-fetched and extreme. Who could possibly not want to resist and fight evil? But the more I thought about it, the more examples I saw, the more this is a consistent theme among the left. If there's evil out there, the left isn't going to fight it. They're going to fight the people who do. You look at the threat of Islam. That's a threat. That is a very real and present existential threat in America. What does the left do? They demonize anybody who tries to raise awareness, who tries to suggest a solution to the problem. They demonize them. They vilify them. They make them virtual Hitlers, so that the evil that we're dealing with can go unchecked. That's what they want. They don't want to resist evil. They don't want to fight it. They only want to neutralize those of us who do want to resist evil and fight evil. And this even has to do with businesses. Google apparently now is censoring guns. They are removing shopping results. This just from this morning from zeroheads.com. This is Douglas Stewart is the writer. It appears that Google may have silently joined the ranks of one side of the gun control debate. This is on February 26. Two guys noticed that the results in the most used search engine in the world were returning nothing in the shopping tab when any query included a gun part, model, or manufacturer. First result for the rather broad term of rifle scope netted 0 results. Looking for a Remington razor, that netted a whopping 0 results. You know, and Remington is only one of the most well-known names for firearms. So the writer of this column decided they would test this, and any shopping result for anything related to Remington, Glock, and Colt turns up nothing. So Google doing its part, not to fight evil, but to resist those who do and to fight those who do. You know, Dick's Sporting Goods made a decision today that they're not going to sell assault weapons anymore. They sold one. The shooter in Parkland bought a shotgun legally at a Dick's Sporting Goods store. It's not the gun that he used in the crime, but he bought one. It was entirely legal. That's what background checks, you can strengthen them all you want, but the information in a background check database is only good as the data that's put in there. And if you don't report data that would be relevant, that's going to be useless. And this guy passed a background check. This Nicholas Cruz, despite all of his mental instability and all of that, he passed a background check. And he did when he went into Dick's to buy the shotgun. Didn't get flagged for it. But they got spooked because he did buy a gun at one of their stores, and so they're going to stop selling assault rifles. He said this is what Dick said: following all of the rules and laws, we sold a gun to the Parkland shooter in November of 2017. It was not the gun, nor even the type of gun that he used in the shooting, but it could have been. Here's what Joe Walsh said. He reported on Dick's Sporting Goods' decision to stop selling assault rifles. He said the two things. First, there is no such thing as an assault rifle. And he's right about this. Technically, an assault rifle is fully automatic. That's what an assault rifle is. You're going to get technical about it in military terms. These are not. They're semi-automatic. You get one bullet per trigger pull. You can't just hold the trigger down and get a hail of bullets. That's an assault weapon. Those aren't legal in the United States of America, except going through a lot of paperwork and only under rare circumstances. And secondly, he says, look, this is going to hurt Dick's more than it helps them. And they're exactly right. There's already talk among Dick's patrons that they're going to be involved in a boycott. You can, a lot of different sporting goods stores in the country where you can get weapons, including hunting rifles, which is what an AR-15 is. It's no different than a hunting rifle, just different cosmetics. It's all it is to make it look menacing and make it look like a military weapon. Here's a poll that was done by Morning Consult, and it shows that every major brand that disaffiliated themselves from the NRA has suffered overall damage to their standing with consumers. Morning Consult survey conducted February 23rd to 25 found increases in negative views of businesses that severed ties with the NRA. Remember, a lot of these places offered credit cards in association with the NRA. And so they could give the credit cards out. People would usually have the NRA symbol on them, and they would get a bonus. I mean, they would get a discount. The NRA would get a discount on these cards if they allowed these companies to use them. So they're cutting all that off. They discovered, for instance, that MetLife had a 12% unfavorable rating before they cut their relationship with the NRA. It doubled to 24% in the wake of that move. So anyway, not a smart move for companies or consumers. You know, and you can see that, there's a Florida gun shop owner, you might have seen this. They had a gun show at the Florida State Fairgrounds. They had a record number of people. This was shortly after the shooting. Florida gun show organizers said they've never had so many people attend one of their events. Attracted almost 7,000 attendees to the Florida State Fairgrounds. They had people lined up around the block. I saw some of the pictures. And it's hilarious to me. Why does the left protest guns? Violence. They're connected to violence. They're against violence. They're anti-violence. Well, here is a student gun control protest in Stockton resulted in 5 students getting arrested. Why? Because they were throwing rocks at cops, throwing rocks at police cars, throwing rocks at citizen vehicles. They were charged with battery of an officer, resisting arrest, taking an officer's baton, vandalizing vehicles, including patrol vehicles. So this was, they were called after teachers discovered a student had written up plans for how he would attack the school. He had written up plans for how he was going to attack the school, commit the shooting. They investigated. Nothing illegal was located. The student was booked into the San Joaquin County Juvenile Hall on a terroristic threat. So the students out there to protest violence wind up indulging in violence. Now, one encouraging thing, more people in America are blaming the government rather than guns in this shooting. And again, this goes back to the column I wrote. Who's to blame for this shooting? Who is to blame for this shooting? Nicholas Cruz. You know, when people look for somebody to blame, they talk about everybody but the shooter. He's the one that decided to load the gun, take it to school, target students, and start firing. He's the one that is to blame, exclusively, solo. Other people may have had some complicity in making it easier for him to do it, in not stopping him when they could have, but he and he alone pulled the trigger. So, you know, when they ask who's to blame for the shooting, they don't even include Nicholas Cruz on the list. You could blame the American government, or you could blame guns. 54% believe it was the failure of government agencies that's responsible for the shooting. 33% said it was the failure of adequate gun control. You know, Frederick Douglass was a great hero of the abolition movement during the Civil War days. He taught himself to read and write. He escaped to freedom, became an anti-slavery and human rights activist, newspaper publisher, advisor to presidents, including President Lincoln. But here's what he said in an address that he gave 1 month after the Civil War, speaking to the American Anti-Slavery Society. He said this: while the legislatures of the South can take from him, the black man, the right to keep and bear arms as they can, the work of abolitionists is not finished. So in other words, Frederick Douglass would have been an advocate of the NRA. And don't forget, the NRA helped blacks fight tyranny, helped blacks arm themselves for their own protection. They chartered chapters of the NRA among former slaves in the South. Let's grab a couple of sound bites. Let's grab clip number 2. This illustrates what we're talking about. You know, we saw that the American people are not with dicks on this. They're not with those that are demonizing gun owners and stores that sell gun owners. And Chris Matthews here, he has to grit his teeth, but he admits that they're out of step with the American people. Listen to this.
It's almost like the Middle East. If you sign a treaty and you're Anwar Sadat, or it's like Rabin, you do the right thing, you get killed. You lost on this issue. Tom Foley lost on this issue. And you watch Ryan, who was always sold to me. I have never bought the Paul Ryan argument that he's so great. He right out there today said, I'm not going to do anything on gun control. I'm not touching the weapons. He just said it.
So he says, you lost on the issue. If you do the right thing, you are aggressive in terms of providing defense, you lose. So what Chris Matthews is acknowledging is that the left is completely out of step with the American people on the issue of guns. They recognize the value. They recognize the importance of it. The American people are simply not with them on this topic. Now, here is Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. You're going to love this little soundbite. Here is what Senator Kennedy says. Instead of gun control, there's something else we need. Listen to this.
In order to get to that spirit, in order to achieve that spirit, in order to achieve anything, is there any gun measure, any legislation you could conceive of supporting?
I don't think we need more gun control laws.
Not a single one?
No, I think we need more idiot control.
Okay, so that's Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. We don't need more gun control. We need more idiot control. I could not agree more. Now, Donald Trump, last clip of the segment, clip number 4. Donald Trump brings up an issue we've talked about on this program before. Let's listen.
You know, in the old days, we had mental institutions. You had a lot of them. And you could nab somebody like this because, you know, they did. They knew something was off. You had to know that. People were calling all over the place. But you used to be able to bring him into a mental institution, and hopefully he gets help or whatever, but he's off the streets. You can't arrest him, I guess, because he hasn't done anything, but you know he's like a boiler ready to explode, right? So you have to do something. But you can't put him in jail, I guess, because he hasn't done anything. But in the old days, you'd put him into a mental institution. So we have no halfway. We have nothing between a prison and leaving him at his house, which we can't do anymore.
So the problem here, this is one of the problems, one of the issues is the absence of mental health facilities, and Donald Trump is right. You know those homeless camps that you see in L.A., you see them in San Francisco, you see them all over the place in urban centers. A lot of those people should be in mental health facilities, but they're not. You know why? Because the Democrats closed them down. The Democrats said you cannot cage these people against their will. Cut them loose. Be back with your calls.
Some 2,000 years ago, the followers of the crucified Christ learned that he had risen from the grave. They quickly spread the word that Jesus was alive. It's good news that spread from one generation to the next, and now it's our turn. One way to tell this extraordinary news to others is by simply wearing and sharing our colorful He Lives Easter buttons. Get your pack of 10 today at afastore.net.
You wish you could stop thinking about it, but you can't. It never quite leaves your thoughts. Even in the joyful moments, it's there. The sadness, shame, and sorrow. You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Are you living out your own dreams in the life of your kids?
Welcome to Tips with youth educator Dr. Bill Ziegler.
I had such a great time coaching Little League Baseball, and now I even umpire as a volunteer in our community. And one thing that I see so often is that many parents push their kids so hard, almost to the edge and the brink of breaking down. And I think it's because that the parents wanted to be that great athlete, and now they want their kids to do it so they can live through and see their child be successful. Parents, don't live through your kids. Live alongside your kids and help them to live out their own dreams that they come up with, not you. Take time this week to talk to your kids about what they dream to be. Not what you dream them to be, but what they want to be.
Great educational resources are available at 4tips.org. That's the number 4tipps.org.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. The number to call to join our conversation, anything that has to do with guns or gun control or the Florida shooting, glad to talk about that. 888-589-8840 is the number. 888-589-8840. That number again one more time, 3-888-589-8840. You can join the conversation. I want to just close the loop on bans on assault rifles. I got a lengthy column here from National Review Online, which is very, very good. And basically, he argues that there's no point to an assault weapons ban. You know, the one that's proposed, the Democrats have proposed one, but the problem, he says, this ban, it might stop people from this time forward from buying so-called assault weapons, AR-15s. But it doesn't take into account that there are millions upon millions upon millions of these guns that are already in circulation. There are 320 million guns that are owned by the American people, and a lot of those, I have no idea what percentage, but a lot of them, millions of them, are AR-15s. So this is not going to stop a bad guy from getting an AR-15. Just go out on the street and get it, or buy it in a classified ad. So it's not going to do any good. It's a waste of time and energy. It's a feel-good thing, which will do absolutely nothing to keep AR-15s out of the hands of the bad guys. And here's the last paragraph in his column. An assault weapons ban does nothing to address the underlying causes of mass shootings. It does nothing to empower citizens or police to respond to troubled individuals before they pull the trigger, and it does nothing to enhance the ability of citizens to defend themselves once engaged. In fact, it may well put the armed citizen at a meaningful disadvantage. It is not the answer to mass killings. It's not even an answer. It is, however, an infringement on individual liberty, and it's one that a majority of American voters simply will not tolerate. Now, one quick soundbite before we go to the phones. Remember, the number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Here's my nominee for the Coach of the Year in the college level, Virginia Tech Hokies, home game, Duke University Blue Devils, one of the best college programs in the country. The Hokies head coach is a guy by the name of Buzz Williams. Now, this is a tight game. They are down to crunch time. In fact, at this point in the game, the Hokies are down 4 to Duke, 60-56. And I don't know what was going on prior to this, but the Virginia Tech coach had about had it with the conduct of Virginia Tech fans. This was a home game for Virginia Tech. So when he picks up the microphone and starts talking to the audience, this is a home crowd. He's talking to Virginia Tech fans, talking to his own homies. Listen to this. Here's what he had to say.
Well, Buzz Williams taking the microphone here.
Guys, quit cussing. Quit cussing. And don't throw anything on the floor regardless of what's happening.
Good for him. Listen to the broadcaster says good for him, and the crowd cheers. He said twice, quit cussing. Quit cussing. And apparently they were shouting profane epithets at Duke University players, and he was just tired of that lack of sportsmanship and vulgarity. So Buzz Williams, my nominee for NCAA Coach of the Year.
And I'll second that.
Second that emotion. All right, 888-589-8840. Let's grab a call from Kevin in, is it Pocahontas, Arkansas?
That is correct.
Pocahontas. All right, hey, well, send a greeting along to your mayor, Elizabeth Warren, for me when you run into her next. All right, Kevin, what's on your mind?
Well, on two fronts, not just the physical protection of our children. I believe that the school system today has failed in protecting our children, not just in the physical sense of creating soft targets. I mean, to turn around and say this is a gun-free zone is creating a soft target for any coward that wishes to kill, such as terrorism and even these school shootings. The other front is this. Children, especially young, do not need to be exposed to something that's unhealthy to them, and that is in danger to their not just physical health but mental health. For instance, transgender teaching in schools, how they're trying to sneak this in, is exposing our children to a community. If the facts be true, a 40% suicide rate.
Yes,
that's a risk to our children. A gross negligence in the school system of allowing this to be done. It's a failure, a moral depravity, failure of protecting our children, not just in the physical but also in the mental and spiritual.
All right,
and
Kevin.
That's my comment, Brian.
Okay. Oh, great, Kevin. Great call. And that's a profound observation that Kevin is making, is when you talk about protecting our kids from harm and danger, you not only you can't just stop talking at the physical level. You can't just talk about their physical safety. Who is protecting their moral integrity? Who's protecting their sexual purity? And remember what we said, the left does not fight evil. It fights the people who fight evil. It does not resist evil. It fights those who do. So when we're out there, just ordinary American parents, trying to stop this transgender agenda, which is promotion of sexual deviancy, it confuses kids. It alarms kids. You know, we got the story where a school, elementary school in Rockland, California, they had a teacher spring this transgender lesson on their students the last day of school, and the kids were traumatized. They had 5-year-old kids coming home from school. They were desperately worried that they were overnight going to turn into the opposite sex. Girls were frightened. Boys were frightened. They didn't want to turn into girls. The girls didn't want to turn into boys. They were happy being girls. They were happy being boys. The teacher freaked them out that they were going to overnight turn into the opposite sex. I mean, that is not protecting our children's mental health and their moral health at all. But again, remember, that's the left. Anything that resists evil, they will fight. Anything that stops evil, anything that slows evil down, they will fight. All right, good call, Kevin. Appreciate that. From Pocahontas, Arkansas. First time I knew that there was a Pocahontas, Arkansas. Let's go to Mike in Pauls Valley, Oklahoma. Mike, welcome. What's on your mind?
Well, this kind of goes along with the quote you made today about how they fight. The left fights those who are fighting evil.
Yeah.
And their solution to all these problems is always based on compliance by the criminal. It's never going to work like that.
Yeah. Now, elaborate on what you mean by that.
Well, they all their gun control and stuff they want more of. It's all based on compliance by the people who are going to commit the crimes.
Yeah.
And
Well, you got.
They're not going to comply with it.
Yeah, you got a point there, and thanks, Mike. I really appreciate your call. And you think about that. I mean, everybody knows that you shall not murder. So what Mike is saying, look, the left is counting on the bad guys to comply with that of their own free will. Well, if they were law-abiding people, they wouldn't start shooting places up in the first place. In other words, you cannot count if people have an evil bent, they've got an evil intention, an evil desire, an evil purpose. You cannot count on them to self-correct. You've got to be prepared to use force, whatever force is necessary, to prevent that evil from moving forward. But the left doesn't see it that way. Got to count on the voluntary compliance of those who are evil, and if they don't voluntarily comply and they shoot up a school, well, that's just too bad. All right, let's go to Keith in Justin, Texas. Keith, welcome. What's on your mind?
Well, I've got two kids that go to a school in North Fort Worth, Texas, and apparently yesterday a young man was arrested with a gun on him, threatening to shoot up the school. And today my daughter texted me and says that a bunch of other kids are saying that somebody else is going to shoot up the school, and it's really got her terrified. My issue is I don't have a problem at all arming teachers with the proper training and the faculty and staff being armed, not a problem at all. What I have a huge issue with is teaching our kids to cower down in the corner of a classroom. You've got a shooter, and you've got one shooter against thousands of kids. Why aren't we teaching our kids to stand up and fight?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if 10, 15, 20, 30 kids rush this kid, somebody's going to get shot and somebody might get killed anyway, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
But if some kids stand up and fight, they might have a chance to take this young man down without the police even being there, because who knows if they're even going to enter the building once they get there.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, Keith. And, I told my son, he was in high school when the Columbine shooting happened. He was a sophomore, I think. And I said, look, JD, if something like this happens at your high school, at Capitol High School, instead of hiding behind a desk in the cafeteria, you need to get your buddies together, and together you need to neutralize this guy. You got to go after somebody like that, and you and your buddies can do it. You have more. You outnumber him. Somebody might lose their life. It might even be you, but you've got your fellow students to protect. You have got to go after this guy. You can't let him get away with this and just roam through the school, just shooting people at random. All right, Keith, appreciate the call. Thank you. Let's go to Basil in Facebook, Florida. Yikes. We got Pocahontas, Arkansas, and Facebook, Florida. Is that right, Basil?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
How you doing, Brian?
All right, go ahead.
Good.
Basil, what's on your mind?
I was just saying nobody blaming the shooter.
Yes.
Everybody blaming everything else but the shooter. When you stand in front of God, you can't blame anybody but yourself. And I think the police need to put some stricter penalty on gun violence. That guy shouldn't walk out of the school in handcuffs. He should have walked out of the school dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because when people see that, they will think twice before shooting people.
Yeah.
But the law is it's too flaky.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you, Basil. The Bible says, if man sheds blood, by man his blood shall be shed. Now, if they neutralize, Nicholas Cruz wasn't a threat when the cops caught up with him. He wasn't armed. He left his weapons behind. They found him like in a Subway or a McDonald's or something, or walking down the sidewalk. And saying at that point, I don't think you just shoot him in cold blood. I mean, that's not justice. But he ought to go to trial. He admitted he did it. So he should have been tried and should have been executed within a matter of weeks. Probably by now, he already should have been executed if justice was going to be done. Now, he's going to plead guilty, and they're going to give him, in exchange for a guilty plea and the cost of a trial, they're going to give him life, 3 meals a day, warm place to sleep, exercise room, and all that. Back in after the news.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
You only want to donate to biblically sound organizations. So as a federal or state employee, why not choose the American Family Association Combined Federal Campaign Designation 12037? Of the organizations on the CFC list, AFA is one of the few standing for you and your family. By choosing 12037, you help make it possible for us to continue.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The flag over the Capitol building is at half-staff as the body of the late Reverend Billy Graham lies in honor in the rotunda. House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell both said a few words to remember America's pastor before President Trump gave a eulogy about the impact Graham had over the history of the country.
Around us stand the statues of heroes who led the nation in prayer during the great and difficult times, from Washington to Lincoln to Eisenhower to King. And today, in the center of this great chamber lies legendary Billy Graham, an ambassador for Christ who reminded the world of the power of prayer and the gift of God's grace.
Reverend Graham's body will remain in the rotunda today before returning to North Carolina for a private funeral service. 3 wreaths of flowers from the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the executive branch were placed around the closed casket of the late evangelist. A conservative political scientist says it will be extraordinarily difficult for John Kasich to mount a challenge to President Trump in 2 years. More from Chad Groening.
According to Politico, John Kasich's inner circle is gearing up for a possible presidential run in 2020, actively weighing the prospect of a Republican primary challenge to President Donald Trump against the feasibility of a long-shot general election campaign as an independent. Some of his advisors believe there's a possibility that Trump won't seek a second term, and that is one reason why the Ohio governor has yet to decide whether to pursue an independent bid or a primary challenge. Dr. Charles Dunn is Professor Emeritus of Government at Clemson University.
John Kasich did not support the party and Donald Trump. So for him now to want to lead an effort to undo Donald Trump would make him look like a sore loser.
And Dunn says in 2016, Kasich threw everything he could at Trump, but was thoroughly trounced in the polls.
So how could Kasich think he could beat Donald Trump now with the record that Trump is developing to run on? Just take, for example, tax cuts alone, but then how he's on the offense on immigration. Where would somebody like Kasich be able to establish a creditable campaign against Trump, who has demonstrated a winning record and is on the offense on other issues as well?
Still, as Politico points out, Kasich plans to attend a wide range of events around the country in the coming months. I'm Chad Groening.
Homeschool Legal Defense Association has come to the rescue of a Norwegian family whose 12-year-old son was chased down and tackled by authorities for simply getting his education at home. We get the story from Bob Kellogg.
Leith and Teresa Christensen decided to homeschool their son Kai after school officials refused to do anything about his being bullied. Homeschooling is legal in Norway, but Mike Donnelly of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association says authorities don't like it, and they went after Kai.
And so they came into the neighborhood without any warning, and he didn't want to go with them, and so he ran away from the police. They chased him down. Video shows they tackled him in the snow. He obviously didn't want to go with them, but they took him.
After 2 weeks, Donnelly says Kai is back home with his parents thanks to HSLDA getting involved.
HSLDA had initiated a petition. We got tens of thousands of signatures on it and made thousands of contacts with the Norwegian embassy and to the Ministry of Welfare in Norway, demanding that they return Kai Christensen to his parents, Teresa and Leif.
Donnelly explains a stipulation for his return is that Kai will have to attend a public school, but he will be going to a different one where he hopefully will not be bullied. I'm Bob Kellogg.
U.S. economic growth has been revised down slightly to a still solid 2.5% rate in the final 3 months of last year. American Family News is available online at onenewsnow.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Announcing 3 new episodes of Ryan DeFrady's Secret Agent. These animated half-hour episodes will entertain children.
That's right!
And teach lessons about joy, patience, and the dangers of selfishness. Ryan DeFrady's is a secret agent with a whole lot to learn, and he insists on working alone until he's paired with a very unlikely partner.
Mommy!
Ryan DeFrady's Secret Agent, episodes 4, 5, and 6 from American Family Studios are available now at afastore.net.
Prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to the second hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Glad that you are with us, no matter how you happen to be with us, whether you are live streaming us on Facebook. And by the way, our bad, that caller was called in. He let us know that he was watching us live streaming on Facebook. He doesn't have one of our stations on our network in his community, but he's live streaming us on Facebook. So if you don't have an AFR station in your community, you can always live stream us on Facebook. You can audio stream us at afr.net. You can live stream us on YouTube. Now, you can do it that way. You can use the apps for the iPhone and the Android to listen to us on the go. You also have the option of listening to us via podcast. We have hundreds of thousands of people every month that use the podcast to keep up with us. You can do that. And don't forget, we record the program as we live stream it on Facebook. It gets recorded. It gets uploaded to the Facebook page with an extensive table of contents. All right, let's go to Lynn in Quad Cities, Illinois. Lynn, Quad Cities, Illinois, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Fisher.
Good afternoon.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment about this assault weapons business here again. I have an old Browning hunting shotgun, an early 60s model. It's a semi-automatic, and it'll hold 5 rounds. So, let's say I have that, and you have an AR-15 with a 30-round clip. You, and we're both, we're in a situation now we're doing long-distance target shooting, because all these school shootings, it's all very close-distance targets, if you will. Okay, so in order for you to put out those 30 projectiles out of your magazine, you have to pull that trigger 30 times. I only have to pull my trigger 5 times to put out 35 projectiles that are actually larger in diameter than yours, but you're carrying the assault weapon?
Good point.
So the weapon you were carrying, shotgun, better assault weapon than the assault weapons that everybody's demonizing, but nobody's talking about doing anything with shotguns. So, all right, I appreciate.
Yeah, my old early '60s Browning hunting shotgun.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate it, Lynn. That's an interesting piece of clarification. He can get off more projectiles by pulling the trigger 5 times with the shotgun than a guy with an AR-15 who's got a 30-round magazine.
Buckshot is definitely a pretty awesome round. I would not want to be on the receiving end.
Well, I tell you, it'll slow a guy down. If he just, you have a shooter that just gets hit, he's going to be neutralized because he's going to be preoccupied now with his wounds. And even if you don't hit a shooter, if there's somebody in the building that has a weapon and is firing it in his direction, it's going to neutralize him. He's going to have to stop. He's going to have to find cover. He's going to have to try to figure out where the guns are coming from or the bullets are coming from because he doesn't want to get shot. So even somebody, so what if you only hit a target 13% of the time? You don't need to if it's going to drive the shooter into cover and is going to neutralize him because he doesn't know where the missiles are coming from. All right, let's shift gears and talk about immigration here for a minute. Let's go to clip number 6. This is Lindsey Graham fondly known in the conservative community as Lindsey Grahamnesty, because that's what he's all about. This guy is an open borders guy. You all come in. Doesn't want any restrictions on abortion. Why, that's just mean. So that's Lindsey Graham, and he is deeply worried about what would happen if we end DACA. And I realize DACA is a controversial issue, and in fact, the American people really, by and large, support this bill. And I'll tell you why, because the media, every time they talk about it, they dredge up these images of poor people. It's the only country they've ever known. They're going to be shipped off to a completely hostile environment. They're not going to know anything. They're going to start all over. It's just mean and cruel, even though they're breaking the law, and their parents broke the law to bring them here. You know, my feeling on that with DACA, in terms of what we do with DACA recipients when we find them, they need to be returned to their homeland because they're breaking the law by being here. But we offer to them to return their whole families together. Let's keep the families together. We believe in family unification, and we say to the family, look, anybody who is not a citizen and is here in violation of the law, we are going to need to return you to your home country. Now, if anybody in your family is here legally, they have a residency permit or whatever, they can stay if they want, but we will facilitate you returning with your entire intact family to your homeland. Now, remember, these people clearly had no problem leaving their native country and going to a completely different country. That's how they got here. So the principle is no different than what we would be insisting on to uphold the rule of law. But the American people, they've been brainwashed by the news media, so it's going to be pretty difficult to end DACA and start deporting those DACA recipients that are apprehended by law enforcement. In fact, about 6 in 10 Americans believe that DACA is going to continue, and 83% favor continuing this program, even though this is amazing to me, because we believe in the rule of law. That's one of the distinctives of a Republican form of government. We believe in the rule of law. But notice this, the DACA program itself is illegal and unconstitutional. Even Barack Obama admitted it when he kept telling people, look, I'm not a king. I just can't make up a rule. We have such a thing as a Constitution. Well, he finally got tired of being stymied by the Constitution, so I'm just going to go around it. And so by executive order, he creates the DACA program, completely unconstitutional. And all the people that are here under the DACA program, they likewise are illegal. They're here illegally, and they're violating our Constitution just by being here. But everybody wants to tolerate this law-breaking behavior. And sure, you can understand on grounds of compassion why you'd want to, but we shouldn't just simply avoid the fact that what we are doing is tolerating, endorsing, embracing wholly illegal and unconstitutional behavior. And again, I believe we really ought to make it a priority to keep families together. Let them make the choice. If they all want to go back together, those that legally can be here can stay. If the parents have been here long enough or they have a residency permit, remember the parents came here illegally, so most of them probably have no right to be here any more than their children do. Let's keep the families together and get them back home. So anyway, very popular plan with the American public, largely because of the sales job that's been done by the mainstream American media. So did we play the Lindsey Graham clip? Okay, let's play Lindsey Graham. I set it up and then we never played it. Clip number 6, Lindsey Graham.
If we did nothing and just ended DACA and did nothing else, and a lot of these young people start getting deported, then that would destroy the party. So I don't think that's even a viable option. The options are to 1 or 2 year punt it down the road, deal with it later, or the president engage again and see where the sweet spot's at. And it's pretty clear to me that after those 4 votes, you know where the sweet spot's at, which is border security for DACA.
You know, and the reality is there is no sweet spot. Lindsey Graham is talking like the Democrats are ready to exchange border security for DACA, and they're not. Because Donald Trump not only has offered them DACA, he's even sweetened the pot by saying, I will legalize twice as many, and in fact, I will go further than the Democrats. No Democrat proposal went that far. That's more extreme even than Donald Trump's proposal on DACA, just in exchange for a border wall, which, by the way, they're already starting some work in downtown Calexico on about a 2-mile stretch of the border wall. So construction is already beginning on some parts of the wall. But Donald Trump says, look, I'll give you DACA. I'll give you twice as much as you wanted, almost 3 times as much as you wanted. Instead of just 700,000, I'll give you 1.8 million. That's 2.5 times what you wanted. Just give me $25 billion for border wall. The Democrats absolutely not interested. So Lindsey Graham was just wrong when he says that's the sweet spot. It ain't. Back after these messages.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
Dr. Julie Gunther's Idaho Clinic does not follow the 7.7-minute office visit or the systematized approach to medicine done in most clinics today. She's committed to a community of people. She's someone who knows the stories, the heartbreaks, and the adventures and participates lifelong as a resource for her patients. She's a modern-day medicine woman, exactly what she always wanted to be, and she's part of our wedge of health freedom. She bought a building and started her own practice called Spark MD after she got tired of feeling badly every day for spending so much time on paperwork and not patient care. She liberated herself so that she could be a doctor to her patients. Find her at jointhewedge.com.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
Preborn is saving babies' lives.
My name is Omaris, and I was 19 when I found out I was pregnant. I felt that if I brought a child to this planet, that I could not take care of it, and I could not be mentally prepared to handle everything that comes with having a child. So I thought my best option was to have an abortion. And once I came to have my ultrasound and I heard his heartbeat, I could not have an abortion.
The Ministry of Preborn saves babies' lives through ultrasounds. When a mother hears her baby's heartbeat on an ultrasound, she'll choose life 80% of the time. To donate and provide for a free ultrasound to help save a baby's life, go to preborn.com or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. I want to begin this segment with our catastrophic global warming update. This comes from the UK, the Express newspaper in the UK. Title of the piece, Snow Chaos. Beast from the East leaves 4 dead while Storm Emma threatens worse weather. This is the Met Office, the Metropolitan Office. This is their official weather office in the UK. They're issuing amber warnings as the UK is engulfed in snow. Experts predict this winter's long, big freeze could cause the highest death toll for 20 years. You've got train service being canceled, services disrupted. Storm Emma is due to hit on Thursday night, going to bring misery to millions more of us. Will sweep a huge volume of moisture in from the Atlantic, bringing the worst freezing event for years. Now, I want to remind you that back around 2000, the Met issued some kind of editorial that ran in London newspapers, UK newspapers, saying, look, you know, and they were just wringing their hands. They were virtually weeping as they wrote this column, that our children in the UK, they are going to grow up and they are never going to know what snow is like. They're not even going to have a memory of snow because of catastrophic global warming. We got to get busy. If our children want to have the memory of snow, we've got to start doing things right now. So the whole thing is just hooey, just bilge, nothing to the catastrophic global warming bilge. You know, here's a story out of Texas where a 17-year-old girl is facing a capital murder charge when she stabbed her newborn baby just minutes after it was born. So she's facing capital murder. Stabbed her baby minutes after it was born, and well, she should. But realize now, if she had aborted this baby just minutes earlier, she'd be completely off the hook. And the individual who murdered her baby would be completely off the hook. So our policies regarding the unborn are just insane. And Hillary Clinton is perfectly ready to allow abortionists to commit capital murder on a baby just minutes before it's born. This girl made the mistake, if you want to put it that way, of committing capital murder after her baby was born, and therefore she is in trouble for the rest of her life. So that's just a folly of our sanctity of life laws. One thing you might not have noticed when the hearse that carried Billy Graham to the U.S. Capitol, if you see pictures of it, you might look at this. He had two flags on the front of the hearse, and both of them were Christian flags that dated back to the 1800s. Here's a little bit of a story from Christian Today. The Christian flag dates back to an impromptu speech given by Charles C. Overton, a Sunday school superintendent in New York, on September 26, 1897. The guest speaker for the Sunday school kickoff didn't show up, so Overton had to wing it. Spying an American flag near the podium, he started talking about flags and their symbolism. Along the way, he proposed that Christians should have their own flag, an idea that stayed on his mind long after the speech. In 1907, he teamed up with Ralph Diffendorfer, secretary to the Methodist Young People's Missionary Movement, to produce and promote the flag. The colors on the flag match those on the American flag. White represents purity and peace. Blue indicates fidelity. Red stands for Christ's blood sacrifice. So one of the flags, let's see, well, it has the red Latin cross symbolizing the blood of Christ. There's blue on the flag, represents baptismal waters and the rebirth of one's soul, and the white represents purity. So that was on the front of Billy Graham's hearse today, small flag, so you might not have been able to see them up close enough to be able to understand or recognize what they are. Fox News Channel is continuing to dominate the cable news network, beating out CNN and MSNBC in average viewership for the 20th straight month. They had 1.5 million viewers in February, almost twice as many as MSNBC and more than twice as many than CNN's 700,000. So in other words, they have their listing audience, or their viewing audience, is just about identical to the combined viewing audience of CNN and MSNBC. And what that means is more and more American people are just kind of seeing through the bilge of left-wing media. Just want to give you a heads up about CPAC. It's gone, ladies and gentlemen. It's going. They're now working on embracing transgenderism. I'll talk about a little bit more about this tomorrow. But that CPAC, that's no longer the Conservative Political Action Conference. I don't even know what you call it if they're embracing transgenderism. Now, a couple of more items on the immigration issue. Let me drop down to Chris Kobach, clip 13. And this has to do with a dispute, a redistricting dispute, I believe, in the state of Pennsylvania, where the Republicans redrew the congressional districting map, and the Democrats screamed and hollered, claiming that it was a Republican map, that it favored the Republicans. So they went to court, and the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania said, okay, we're going to take it out of both your hands, and we're going to redraw the redistricting map for you. Now, remember, these maps are important because they carve a state up into congressional districts. Each one of those congressional districts represents one electoral vote and gets one representative in the House. So these are very, very important. And now the way they're supposed to be drawn up, they ought to be drawn up just purely objectively. You try to get the same number of people in every district as much as possible. You try to use existing boundaries, whether it's counties or city limits or whatever. You try to use existing boundaries and get roughly an equal number of people in each one of those congressional districts. It's not that difficult to do. But everybody wants to gerrymander, get these squirrely-looking districts so they can favor their political party. I'm opposed to that, whether Republicans do it or Democrats do it. But what the Supreme Court has done, it has a heavy majority, Democrat majority. They have redrawn that map so it very heavily favors the Democratic Party. Here's Chris Kobach talking about it, clip 13.
Think of it this way. There are 710,000 people per representative in Congress. But if you live in a district like Maxine Waters' district out in California, probably half or more of your district is illegal aliens. And so you may only have 350 citizens voting in your district. Those citizens' vote counts twice as much as my vote or your vote if you live in a district that doesn't have tons of illegal aliens. So you have vote dilution where some people's vote matters more than others because they have tons of illegal aliens in their district.
So Chris Kobach's point, this is appropriate or applied to illegal immigration just as much. He says, look, if you don't control illegal immigration, you have a lot of illegal aliens in your district, and they can't vote. But all this does is dilute the vote of people that live in honest districts. He says this in clip 14.
Well, I think it's a dirty little secret that they don't want to talk about. And you're absolutely right. The 1964 decision of the Supreme Court, Westbury versus Sanders, says voting dilution is unconstitutional. You cannot have one congressional district where there are fewer voters than there are in another district. And because of illegal immigration, we have crazy disproportional, extraordinary numbers where, in a Midwestern seat, you might have to get 120,000 votes to win your election. In Waters' district, you might only need 40,000.
So in Maxine Waters' district, the reason you don't need 120,000 votes is maybe you got 160,000 people in there that are illegal and can't vote. So you don't need as many votes. So that dilutes the votes in other districts, which is fundamentally, obviously, unfair. Now, clip 16, Chris Kobach, he's the Secretary of State in the state of Kansas. He talks about the solution to the immigration proposal, and this is the plan I believe we ought to get behind. I'll tell you why. He talks about the Goodlatte bill out of the House. And what I like about this Goodlatte bill is it's kind of a compromise. It represents a compromise on the DACA issue because the Goodlatte bill says, okay, we'll allow these DACA recipients, these 690,000, doesn't go to 1.8 million. We will allow, in exchange for border security, a border wall, we'll allow these 690,000 DACA recipients to stay in the United States, but they are forever barred from ever getting citizenship. Why? So they cannot get the franchise. They're not going to get the ability to become voters in America's system and so tilt the scales. And this is what Democrats are counting on. They don't care about illegal immigrants. They care about votes. Every illegal immigrant to them is a potential or likely voter. They want to get them in the country. Eventually they know they can wear down the resistance of the American people. Eventually they will be overwhelmed by the images that the media paints, drawing on their compassion. They'll give these people the vote, and all of a sudden you've got Democrats have so many voters, so many people representing them that they can defeat the Republicans in virtually any elections. Here's Chris Kobach talking about the Goodlatte bill.
Well, I think the best outcome would be the Goodlatte bill out of the House, which is a very limited amnesty only for 700,000. And bear in mind, that amnesty is bad policy, and it hurts our country, but it is outweighed by a bunch of good things. E-Verify for the whole nation, getting rid of chain migration. That's the only deal that I think is even remotely acceptable. But Brian, what I see happening is this. Absolutely nothing coming out of the Congress, because we saw last week what the Senate did. They debated on 4 different proposals. None of those proposals could get to 60 votes. So what that tells the House members is, look, if we spend weeks, deliberating on a House bill, we're going to throw it over to the Senate, and it's not going to pass the Senate anyway. So they may be thinking, you know what, why waste the time when we'll spend all that time and energy, and then the Senate will just throw it in the trash and do nothing.
So Chris Kobach, and I want you to remember this because I agree with Chris Kobach on this. You might disagree. That's fine. You can have your own opinion, of course. But the Goodlatte bill is the only moderately acceptable bill that's out there. The only one. That's it. So you hear anything other than the Goodlatte bill, it's an inferior product. Now, Chris Kobach makes the point, look, the Goodlatte bill still allows 690,000 people who are here illegally to stay permanently. They just can't get citizenship, so that's what makes it moderately palatable, where you can maybe choke it down. But the Goodlatte bill includes E-Verify. That's going to be one of the most effective things we can do to reduce illegal immigration, because if E-Verify is used and there is adequate policing of that, so businessmen, employers, companies that don't use E-Verify, that's where somebody shows up and wants a job, you have to run their Social Security number through a federal data bank, and if they don't pass, they don't get a job. Well, that's going to prevent illegal aliens from taking jobs from American citizens. So chain migration comes to an end. Remember, every 2 immigrants that come in under chain migration bring 7 foreign immigrants in with them. So chain migration, you go from 1 to 2 to 9, boom, virtually just like that. And there are some other good things in the Goodlatte bill. But, he says, no, they couldn't get to 60 votes with any of those 4 proposals. 3 of them got 51 votes. What does that tell you? The Fake-A-Buster is the reason. If it wasn't for this phony Fake-A-Buster, 3 of those bills would have passed. So the Fake-A-Buster, that's Mitch McConnell cobbing everything up.
Are you a responsible person who finds yourself growing deeper and deeper in credit card debt and you're not sure how to fix the problem? Then get ready for a toll-free number that will put you on a path to financial recovery. Trinity Debt Management is a nonprofit organization that will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, and reduce your interest rates by as much as 60%. You'll save thousands and become debt-free for keeps. It's not a loan. It's a smart way to relieve your stress, meet your obligations, and preserve your self-respect. If your debt has you down, we should talk. Gather up your bills and call this toll-free number for a free, no-obligation debt analysis. 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813. If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
You shall not murder. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. This is the 6th commandment of the 10 commandments. You shall not murder. We are asking schools all over America to put this on their marquees, put this on their signs out in front of their school for 1 week to remind America's students that innocent life is precious. Help us spread the word about this campaign to your friends and family. Please go to our website, afa.net, and sign our open letter to America's schools. We need to proclaim this message, you shall not murder, across the land. Why? Because gun control alone will not solve matters of the heart. We need our young people to understand that murder is a violation of God's law, and also it's a violation of the laws all across this land. So help us. Go to afa.net and spread the word.
Here on American Family Radio, this is David Wolin with Haven Ministries, inviting you to anchor your day in God's Word. There is no better test for your spiritual state and condition than, well, how would you finish that sentence? The great preacher D. Martin Lloyd-Jones answered like this. He said, "There is no better test than your missionary zeal, your concern for lost souls." After all, in Matthew 7, Jesus says, "Wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. And that narrow road is Jesus." So, as His followers, let's ask God today to deepen our concern for those who are outside of Christ. Try out Anchor Devotional today, in print monthly. Visit getanchor.com.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Hi, welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Glad to have you in the conversation. A couple of more items. Here's an article by J. Christian Adams, again, talking about this immigration issue and how it can dilute the vote, disturb the vote. And if illegal immigration is not controlled, it will be the end of the Republican Party. I'm not exaggerating that. 75% of all illegal immigrants, if they wind up getting residency, citizenship, and eventually are able to vote, 75 to 80% of them vote Democrats, because most of them come from socialist countries. So they're used to big government, they're used to expanding government, they're used to social programs. It's what they're used to, it's what they like, it's what the Democrats offer. They're going to vote Democrats 75, 80% of the time. And it will be the end of the Republican Party if we don't get a handle on immigration. And worse than that, it'll be the end of our country if we don't, regardless of what happens, either the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. And J. Christian Adams, he is a lawyer with the Public Interest Legal Foundation. Their research disclosed that in the state of Pennsylvania, there are 100,000 non-citizen registered voters. 100,000 non-citizen registered voters. Now realize if these people vote as we typically would expect them to do, be 70,000 would vote for the Democrat, 75,000, let's say, 25,000 for the Republicans. So that's a 50,000 vote advantage in a statewide race, for instance, for any Democrat that would want to run. That's why it is such a problem. Now here's Ted Cruz, clip number 19. Ted Cruz, one of the ones complaining about the immigration bill that Donald Trump was proposing.
Listen, the plans that are before the Senate right now, I think they don't make any sense at all. We should not be granting citizenship to people here illegally. For whatever reason, you've got a whole lot of Republicans eager and to propose granting citizenship for 1.8 million people here illegally. Listen, that is dramatically to the left of where Barack Obama was. Barack Obama in DACA, which was executive amnesty, it was illegal, it was unconstitutional. DACA covered 690,000 people. Why on earth are Republicans trying to more than double, nearly triple that from 690,000
to 1.8 million?
But it's a more mark my words. If Republican majorities in Congress pass citizenship for millions of people in amnesty, I think it is quite likely we will lose both houses of Congress, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi will impeach President Trump.
And he's right about that. You know, you think the Democrats, when they talk about impeaching Donald Trump, that this is just kind of a fantasy, or it's a part of them want to do it, some of them do it. San Diego State University right now has one course that's devoted exclusively to impeaching Donald Trump, a how to do it course on how to impeach Donald Trump. And the only textbook they use is a book that was written to lay out the case for impeaching Donald Trump. It's not a course on impeachment, what the Constitution teaches. It's a course on how to remove Donald Trump from office. You know, and the reason that they are intent about this, we saw this Donnie Deutsch yesterday. Remember, he said, look, if we don't find a way to get Donald Trump out of office before 2020, he will win re-election in an absolute, total, utter landslide. A couple of pieces of good news on the immigration front. Remember Donald Trump tangled with that Mexican judge during the campaign, thought he couldn't be unbiased. He was dealing with a Trump University lawsuit, I think. Well, that judge ruled on the wall yesterday, and he ruled in favor of Donald Trump. So the building of the wall can proceed. Remember what the Trump administration done is they had gotten rid of a lot of environmental regulations that keep getting in the way of new construction. And it started, the left sued to hold it up. And this judge, Gonzalo Curiel, he said the Trump administration had not exceeded its legal authority in pursuing the project. So that's a win for Donald Trump and for immigration control. Remember, we played that soundbite yesterday, the mayor of Oakland warning her people that ICE was coming, and ICE confirmed today that they made 150 plus arrests in their sweep in California. And remember, it's not a sweep. That's the wrong term to use. This is San Francisco Chronicle uses it, but it's not a sweep. It's very targeted. They are going for specific individuals. They have arrests. They have names. It's not a sweep, round everybody up, and then sort them out. No, they go knock on specific doors to arrest specific people. But they got 150 of them in a Northern California action yesterday. And what ICE is saying, look, remember, California is a sanctuary city, or a state. Oakland is a sanctuary city. And the head of ICE says, look, what this policy does, because they will not cooperate with us, normally ICE can go and they can arrest these illegal aliens that need to be deported while they are in the custody of local officials. They're detained. They're in a jail. But because these officials will not cooperate with them, they have to apprehend them out in the public, which means it's more dangerous from them, for them. So these Americans that are promoting sanctuary cities, they are endangering the lives of ICE officers every time they do this. And ICE estimates that there were 800 to 864 illegal aliens that escaped arrest yesterday because of the mayor's warning to Oakland. Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit. I'll get an update on the Mueller investigation. Adam Schiff, he's the guy that's just been a ubiquitous presence on cable and news. I don't know how many TV interviews this guy has given. Nobody ever heard of this guy before Trump's inauguration. Nobody knew who this guy was. Completely invisible legislator, but he has hitched his wagon to the Russian investigation, the Trump collusion myth, and he has given, since Trump's inauguration, 227 interviews since Trump was inaugurated. This adds up to 26 hours and 4 minutes of airtime. He's on air more than Megyn Kelly is. So it's just become a platform to increase his own visibility. And, of course, realize for Adam Schiff, he's the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, meaning he's the highest-ranking Democratic member. The chairman of that is Devin Nunes. But he's in a position where he may be able to use some parliamentary tactics to prolong this issue, to dramatize it, to overhype the investigation, just so he gets more time on TV. He was on MSNBC 111 times. He's been on CNN 87 times. Spent 23 hours of those 26 hours on the two left-leaning networks, so a maximum of 3 hours on any outlets that are remotely conservative. And this is a guy that was invisible on the House floor, not a leader. He spoke in the House chambers a total of 10 times for 36 minutes. So this guy's entire platform is not the House of Representatives, it's MSNBC and CNN. Now, this is kind of cute. There's Representative Matt Gaetz. He's been very active in this Russian investigation, bringing the truth to light. He had some fun because what he did is he took a bill that Adam Schiff had written and submitted in 2013. What this bill did, Adam Schiff wrote it. It granted the president authority to appoint all FISA judges. Well, who was president in 2013? That was Barack Obama. So what Matt Gaetz did, he dusted that thing off. It never got out of committee when Adam Schiff submitted it in 2013. Matt Gaetz pulled that out of the drawer, dusted it off, and he resubmitted it. And he says, look, hey, if it was good enough to give President Obama these powers, it's got to be good enough to give President Trump these powers. They're having a little bit of fun at Adam Schiff's expense. Attorney General Sessions says he's going to open an investigation into Obama's FISA abuse. He's going to have the Inspector General do it. And this has created some angst among conservatives. Let's go down. I think I've got a Judge Napolitano clip. Let's go down to clip number 9. You know, a lot of conservatives, including Donald Trump openly angry with his Attorney General. And he's been so AWOL, according to Napolitano, he wonders, do we even still have an Attorney General? He's going to put it in the hands of the Inspector General instead of attorneys and investigators in the Department of Justice. Here's what Judge Napolitano, well, wait a minute, wait. That's not the clip I'm looking for. I thought I had a Napolitano clip where he was very unhappy with Attorney General Sessions. I guess I don't have that. I must put that in there. All right, skip that. That's a non-existent. I mean, it's an existent quote, but I apparently forgot to grab it and put it in the hopper. Because what Napolitano was saying about Attorney General Sessions in this soundbite, which I unfortunately failed to grab, is that he feels that Sessions is too busy giving speeches to be an effective Attorney General. And he says putting this investigation of FISA abuse in the hands of the Inspector General is too slow. Takes years for these guys. Takes forever for these guys to do it. And furthermore, an Inspector General cannot indict. He can only report on whether or not the internal Justice Department regulations have been violated. Well, I suppose you might be able to uncover some skullduggery with FISA applications, because that would have to do with internal Justice Department procedures. But what Napolitano says, you got to give this thing to a team of FBI agents and let them investigate whether or not the law was violated. Inspector General is not going to do that, kind of investigation, that kind of research. You know, and Judge Napolitano says this guy has been so AWOL. He's a friend of mine, so I don't even like saying this. I feel badly about saying this, but I wonder if we even still have an attorney general. He seems to be not there. All he seems to be doing is making speeches, not running the DOJ. I think the president shares that frustration, and Donald Trump openly shared that frustration today. You know, one of the other things, remember, we've seen before that the real violation was interfering with an American election, using foreign resources to interfere with an American election. Hillary Clinton did that. It was her money paying for this dossier to track to get the Russians to interfere with the American election. She should be on trial. Back with your calls.
Physicians keep learning after medical school in order to better save lives. Shouldn't Christian leaders keep learning to better save souls? Hi, I'm Dr. John Nyhoff, president of Wesley Biblical Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi, and online around the world. Are you a Christian leader who thinks it's important to keep learning? WBS online weekend and evening classes allow graduate students to become better equipped to make disciples in a constantly changing world. For more information, visit wbs.edu.
Exposing Washington with Walker Wildman.
So who is responsible for the dysfunction in Washington? That's what we're going to be discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
Today, moral relativism and political correctness are assaulting truth. How can the world have hope when believers themselves aren't clear on the authority of the Bible?
The Church of Jesus Christ always faces a tremendous temptation to deviate from the Word of God.
The God who speaks clearly expresses God's intent in giving us His Word and the response that is demanded of those who hear.
Nobody ever encounters God and says, that was boring and irrelevant. When people say that about the Bible, it just says to me they've not encountered the God of the Bible.
Our faith is rooted in history, and consequently we need to use the evidence and never be afraid of it.
The God Who Speaks is a feature-length documentary from the American Family Association, which could bolster your confidence in the Word of God.
Churches really need to see this, really need to understand what the Bible actually is.
Available now at thegodwhospeaks.org.
I've been an advocate for biblically responsible investing for many, many years, 30 years, because I'm an advocate for permanent income.
This is Dan Celia from Financial Issues.
I remember having two sisters that had trust funds that I managed. They were family trust. They were the third generation. They were in their 80s. They had more money than you could shake a stick at. They didn't want for anything. And even them, at one point in time, said to me, do we have enough income to pay our bills, our electric bill? That's all they cared about. I'm telling you, you're going to get to that point. So it's not an investment. It's a gift. It's permanent income.
Find out about charitable gift annuities when you call 800-326-4543, extension 345. 800-326-4543, extension 345. Or by visiting afafoundation.net.
Are you living out your own dreams in the life of your kids?
Welcome to Tips with youth educator Dr. Bill Ziegler.
I had such a great time coaching Little League Baseball, and now I even umpire as a volunteer in our community. And one thing that I see so often is that many parents push their kids so hard, almost to the edge and the brink of breaking down. And I think it's because that the parents wanted to be that great athlete, and now they want their kids to do it so they can live through and see their child be successful. Parents, don't live through your kids. Live alongside your kids and help them to live out their own dreams, dreams that they come up with, not you. Take time this week to talk to your kids about what they dream to be, not what you dream them to be, but that what they want to be.
Great educational resources are available at 4tips.org. That's the number 4tipps.org.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Focal Point. Brian Fisher.
Hi, welcome back to Focal Point. Last segment of the program. Brian Fisher is my name. Number to call to join our conversation, 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840. Give us a call right now, 888-589-8840. I do have one Judge Napolitano clip I want to squeeze in. And again, this goes back to Mueller's indictment of 13 Russians because they didn't register as foreign agents or record their financial expenditures to the federal election commissions. They were foreign citizens. They tried to influence an election, and they neither registered as foreign agents nor reported their funding to the FEC. Now, those three things make Hillary Clinton and her campaign a potential target because they knew that Christopher Steele, the author of the dossier, was a foreign citizen. And the Clinton campaign knew and paid Steele to influence an election. They knew he wasn't registered as a foreign agent, and they didn't report that he was being funded by the Clinton campaign to the FEC. So that makes Hillary Clinton, properly speaking, a target. Now, they're not going to go after her because if they go after her, they would have to go, it would expose Barack Obama to legal trouble. And, of course, nobody's going to pursue him. He's untouchable. But here is Judge Napolitano, clip number 9, talking about what we were just mentioning.
Somebody in the Justice Department has a treasure trove of evidence of Mrs. Clinton's criminality at her own hands or through others that ought to be investigated. I fully agree with the president on that.
So Donald Trump thinks she ought to be investigated. Judge Napolitano does, and I do as well. That makes it a unanimous deal. All right, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's start with Pam, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Welcome, Pam. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hey, Brian. Well, here's a thought, and I want to say here, I am not talking about any of our legal citizens from other countries that have gone through the proper channels.
Mm-hmm.
But just maybe, God bless them, but just maybe if we did deport especially the criminal illegals and the others who came here illegally over our border and insulted us, to me, we probably could pay for the border wall since we're funding the family through government programs. So Mexico, to a certain extent, would be paying for the wall if America wasn't having to support them illegally and then them sapping our government system.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah, well, that's very good. And, I mean, the amount of money that we spend, it's a staggering total that we spend on welfare and other kind of programs for illegal aliens. It's a staggering amount of money. And that money we could direct that to other things like building a border wall if we didn't have illegal aliens flooding into the country. All right, good idea, Pam, and it would be a substantial source of revenue. I don't think there'd be enough to pay for the whole thing, but it would be a substantial source of revenue toward the cost of building the wall. Let's go to Gary, Nashville, Arkansas. Gary, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, I just have a statement. I've been a Democrat all my life, and until this last election with our President Trump, God bless him, I am never, and all the stuff that's going on the left, I will never be Democratic again. Never.
Oh, wow.
And I hope there's a lot of people that feel the same way that I do.
Well, that's amazing. And there are. Do you know others, Gary? I mean, you may know other Democrats that have had a similar change of heart. Do you know of that? I mean, I read about Democrats all the time that are having a similar change of heart.
Well, it's just so much crooked stuff has been going on the left. It's like, has everybody lost their minds or what?
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate the call, Gary. And it's, you wonder about that. I mean, all of us do. I mean, you wonder at times, how could people not see this? And apparently, a lot of times it just has to get so bad that you just can't ignore it any longer. And maybe the contrast, Donald Trump was probably the only one that could open the eyes of these people because he was so controversial, he was so edgy, he was so out there that he just made everything an issue, and people had to stop and think about it. All right, appreciate the call, Gary. Thank you for your honesty and admire you for having the open-mindedness to look at what's going on and make a change. Let's go to Dave in Winchester, Virginia. Dave, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Two quick things, Brian. I
I just think that they need to start issuing federal indictments for obstruction of justice on these mayors for these sanctuary towns and cities that are violating the procedures and processes of the justice system that ICE is trying to accomplish. And secondly, I know there'd be backlash from this. Attorney General Sessions was removed from his position, but we need Trey Gowdy in that position, just straight out. That's who we need running the show there to get things back on track.
Yeah.
So I'll hang up and take your comments, Brian.
All right, I think that's a good idea, and a lot of people wishing we had Trey Gowdy in that position. My observation about Trey Gowdy is he's more hat than cattle, if you know what I mean. You look at his career in Congress, and it's a little bit disappointing in terms of what he's actually been able to produce. But remember, he said where he wants to be is in the courtroom, and that's what an attorney general does. He gets people in court facing criminal charges. So he might be just the perfect guy for the attorney general position. All right, let us go. And you're right. This mayor in Oakland, you're right about this mayor in Oakland, essentially served as a lookout for illegal aliens. Look out. ICE is coming. So she's protecting illegal aliens from being apprehended for illegal behavior. I mean, she's an accomplice. So the last caller, Dave, was exactly right. These mayors should be indicted for aiding and abetting illegal conduct. It's inexcusable. Let's go to Linda in Beaumont, Texas. Linda, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, a couple of things concerning illegal aliens. Number one, on the DACA kids, they're talking like, that they've never been to the country they're from. I sort of doubt that because when we moved to San Marcos, Texas, my daughter was in elementary school, we had to get her a hepatitis B shot because of all the people going back and forth across the border. And also, at one point, I worked for a government agency, and we took unemployment claims. One of them was from a black guy who had gotten work at a construction company because their illegal alien had gotten picked up by ICE. And he came in to file for unemployment when about 2 weeks later the illegal alien was back, and the employer was dumb enough to tell him, hey, you've got to go, Jose or Juan or whoever is back.
Yeah. Well, and the disease issue, is a terrific issue. You brought up two issues, but the disease issue, you want to comment about that? We've had a return of a lot of exotic tropical diseases in the United States that are brought into this country by immigrants. It used to be, that's what Ellis Island was all about. Ellis Island was all about examining people for infectious diseases so they don't bring these into the country. And now we're not doing that anymore. Because they're coming in illegally, we don't even have a chance to examine them. But that's the whole reason you have a check on immigrants to make sure they're not bringing diseases into the country that are going to put the health of the American people at risk. We ought to be screening people for HIV. HIV is a contagious disease. It's a communicable disease. It can end somebody's life. We had a policy. Obama changed it, but we had a policy. You could not come into the country if you were HIV positive, and it wasn't singling them out. It's just nobody with an infectious disease gets in. HIV is an infectious disease. You can't come in. But all that's been squandered, and the American people, their health has been put at risk as a result. All right, great call, Linda. I appreciate that. Let us go to Richard in Parkinson, Mississippi. Welcome, Richard. What's on your mind?
I just want to let you know why all the Democrats keep blocking the wall. They keep blocking the wall because, number one, we got the great tax cuts. Number two, we built the wall and chain migration. That's going to revitalize the American economy so exponentially that the Democrats are afraid if they allow this to happen, they're going to lose the rest of their seats in the House and the Senate, and we're going to return to a base foundation of religion and everything in America.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right about that, Richard. I think there's a lot at stake right now in this immigration debate. I think there's a lot at stake in this. I mean, whether we have a future as the United States of America, I think, is a risk. That's going to sound kind of alarmist to some people. But whether we are going to continue to be a country that honors its Judeo-Christian tradition, whether we continue to be a country that honors the Scriptures, that honors God, that honors patriotism, all that is at risk. Ladies and gentlemen, bow low before God, stand tall before man. Stand in the gap and never forget, with God's help, we are fighting a winnable war. See you back here tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.